Italians and Poles and British, like all of them? Wow. Yeah, well, what did you do? You stuck around till the Americans showed up. How come? Ah, I see. Okay. September 18th, 1942. The Wehrmacht launched their summer offensive at the end of June, and now 2.5 months later, they have crossed the steppes and the rivers and have reached Stalingrad on the Volga. They have fought their way step by step to and through the suburbs of the city, and now the final battle begins, Stalingrad. I'm Indy Neidell. This is World War II. Last week on the Kokoda track, the Japanese advance continued, but the Allies were reinforcing. On Guadalcanal, the Japanese prepared for another offensive. In the Caucasus, the Axis advance took Novorossiysk, but Adolf Hitler was so concerned with the lack of progress there that he fired Wilhelm List and took personal control of Army Group A. But all eyes are on Stalingrad, where Axis forces fought their way to the suburbs and even managed to reach the Volga River. And they have breached the suburbs of Stalingrad, and the fight for the city itself now begins. We had an extra regular episode come out on the 13th that explains the situation in the city, so if you haven't seen that yet, you may want to watch that first. Anyhow, the 48th Panzer Corps from Hermann Hoth's 4th Panzer Army reached the Volga at the end of last week, splitting the city in two. You have the city center and the industrial district to the north, and the southern suburbs to the south. On the 13th, with the 48th Panzers now assigned to the 6th Army, so the whole assault is unified under one commander, Friedrich Paulus, the assault begins. The Panzers from the south and the 51st Army Corps from the north and west. Here is a great quote from Robert Citino that pretty well sums up the current situation. In front of the German armies lay a great city with a population of 600,000 and a large, heavy industrial base. Just a few months ago, the Germans had suffered some 75,000 casualties, reducing the much smaller city of Sevastopol. Stalingrad, moreover, presented an unusual set of geographical problems. Rather than a collection of neighborhoods radiating out from some central point, the city was one long urbanized area stretching along the right bank of the Volga for nearly 30 miles, as straight as a railroad tie. In operational terms, therefore, it was not so much a city as a long fortified bridgehead on the western bank of the river. The Germans could never put it under siege. Behind it lay a great river, behind the river a huge force of artillery that could intervene in the battle at will, and behind the artillery a vast, secure, and rapidly industrializing Soviet hinterland. On the 14th, German assault troops take Mamayev-Kurgan, from where Soviet 62nd Army Commander Vasily Chuikov watched them launch their assault the day before. Alexander Rodimtsev begins bringing in the 13th Guard Division from across the river, under heavy fire the whole time, taking 30% casualties on just the 14th, trying to push the Germans back from Mamayev-Kurgan. Chuikov would later say that without the arrival of the 13th Guards, the city would have fallen in mid-September. September 13th and 14th see a huge fight for the center of the city, with the full weight of the Germans hitting 62nd Army. On the 14th, the central railway station changes hands 4 times between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. alone. More 13th Guard units come over the night of the 15th to help in the fight for the station. By the time they clear it of the enemy on the 16th, it has changed hands 15 times. That day, 2 Soviet regiments storm Mamayev-Kurgan from the north and northeast, clearing the Germans and their machine guns from the summit and holding on against repeated German attacks the rest of the week. The German 71st and 295th Divisions fight their way into the city center, the 94th into Minin and towards the junction of the Soviet 62nd and 64th Armies. The morning of the 17th, Chuikov calls for immediate reserves for the depleted 62nd Army. He asks for 2 or 3 divisions. He gets 2 brigades. That evening, one of them just in time to stop a German breakthrough on the Zaritsa. As today, the 18th, begins, the Stukas arrive in the skies over the city as usual, and the German artillery begins barking. However, As the fighting for the station begins again, the planes suddenly veer off to the north. Northwest of the city, Georgy Zhukov's attack to relieve the pressure on the city itself has finally begun. The Soviet 1st Guards, 66th and 24th Armies attack towards Gumrak Gorodishche. Chuikov gets orders from Stavka to get an attack of his own ready to fight his way through to link up with them. Their attack advances 3 kilometers uphill before the German infantry, armor, and dive-bombing Stukas stop it in its tracks. See, the attack isn't any real surprise to the Germans because the rear of the Soviet positions is the open steppe over which you can see forever. In the afternoon, the Stukas return to hitting Stalingrad, which tips Chuikov off that the attack in the northwest has not gone so well. At the southern limit of the 62nd Army, Soviet Marines of the 92nd Brigade now hold the enormous grain elevator, where close-quarter battle rages with the Germans from the 17th, holding off 10 separate attacks today alone. All the while, Chuikov readies his attack, while Zhukov's armies to the northwest prepare to attack yet again. Their renewed attacks will all be launched tomorrow. The Axis are also attacking in the Caucasus. In fact, Ewald von Kleist decides to commit the entire 13th Panzer Division to finally break out across the Terek River, even though his flank defenses are pretty thin. On the 12th, they cross the river and attack westwards toward the bend in the river to expand their bridgehead, grinding their way through Soviet 9th Army defenses, with the goals being Terek and El Khotovo. They advance slowly. Very, very slowly. Now, Gotthard Heinrich's 16th Infantry Division screens Army Group A's northern flank as it advances southward and ties up with Army Group B, right? And they've been sending detachments out on the Kalmyk steppe. But there's not enough water there to support a whole division, so it's really only small units. On the 13th and 14th, 4 German armored cars on a long-range patrol reach Zenzili railway station and briefly interrupt rail traffic before heading back to division. If only Heinrici knew that in August and September, 16,000 railway cars traveled that line from Baku to Astrakhan, carrying a total of 150,000 tons of oil, he might try something more ambitious. Something ambitious that the Japanese have been attempting is not going well this week. On the 14th, on the Kokoda track, Tomitaro Hori's troops are just 50 kilometers from Port Moresby, their goal which they have crossed the mountains to reach, but their advance is stopped after several days of fighting on the 17th, after the Australians are finally reinforced. The Japanese encountered a stiff defense, and their rice, medicine, and ammunition ran low. Illness and starvation threatened. Tantalized, they could see the searchlights of their objective sweeping the sky. General Hori was stubbornly determined not to give up. "We will strike a hammer blow at the stronghold of Port Moresby," he ordered. But there were no reinforcements coming to provide those hammer blows. The 17th Army Reserves were being sent to Guadalcanal. On September 18th came the order to fall back on Buna. A nightmare retreat began for General Hori and his men, but few would survive. The Japanese are attacking again this week on Guadalcanal as well. Japanese command has decided that should Kiyotake Kawaguchi fail, the western end of Guadalcanal Island will be the site of future operations. His men, as we saw, have been pushing through the jungle for a few days now from the east of the American beachhead. Kawaguchi's men found the advance through the jungle resembled compressing a spring. The longer you push, the harder it becomes. Soaked in sweat or bathed in rain, they plodded on, slipping where the moisture made the footing treacherous. The danger of aerial observation necessitated careful and time-consuming steps to avoid open areas by day or leaving visible tracks at any time. On the afternoon of September 10th, Japanese navigation faltered, creating an unexpected jungle traffic jam as 1st Battalion 124th Infantry, 2nd Battalion 4th Infantry, the brigade headquarters, and the Kuma Battalion all ran into one another. On the 12th comes the Battle of Edson's Ridge, also called the Battle of Bloody Ridge. At 9:30 p.m., Japanese naval units off the coast open fire, supporting Kawaguchi's attack. Well, they think they are. Kawaguchi's plan is for a coordinated attack on the ridge south of the airfield, and as luck would have it, a captured American pilot informs him that the American defenses are in fact weakest just there. As jungle would have it, however, all of his assault battalions are late reaching their assembly areas. When the 3 battalions, numbering 2,506 men, went forward, they lost their sense of direction, almost entirely missed the ridge, and instead drifted into the low, waterlogged swath of jungle between the ridge and the Lunga. Units became lost units became scattered units became intermingled. At dawn, the Japanese pull back into the jungle. The night of the 13th comes wave after wave of charges, many of them suicidal charges against Colonel Merritt Edson's exhausted but tenacious troops. The attackers managed to push back the Americans to within 1 kilometer of the end of the runway at Henderson Field before dawn. But Kawaguchi ran out of live bodies before the Marines ran out of live ammunition. Dawn the 14th finds Kawaguchi ordering a retreat through the jungle, leaving behind a carpet of 500 dead Imperial Marines on the ground before the ridge. They have nearly achieved their goal, though, and Kawaguchi is furious to learn that one of his battalions, which likely could have turned the tide, barely entered the battle. And it's worth pointing out that the Cactus Air Force prevented another from even arriving on the scene. And since Kawaguchi has planned on capturing American supplies, he's left most of his food stocks at Tasimboko, so the journey back is on starvation rations through the deadly jungle, which brings his overall casualty rate to over 50%. The Americans, though, are in no position to pursue Kawaguchi's forces, since their only reserves are replacing Edson's spent unit. Japanese Combined Fleet Commander Isoroku Yamamoto, when he gets the news, thinks it will take a full divisional assault to retake Guadalcanal. More on that next week. The U.S. Marines are, though, now being reinforced. The 7th Marines are on their way. 6 transports with 2 carriers, a battleship, and a bunch of smaller ships as escort leave Espiritu Santo for Guadalcanal the 13th. But thanks to aerial recon, the Japanese have deployed 9 submarines on patrol in the convoy's path. And on the 15th, the American carrier Wasp is sunk by a Japanese submarine. At 2:30 p.m., Wasp turns into the wind to retrieve its combat air patrol and send out new planes. Sub I-19 fires its 6 torpedoes from just a few hundred meters away after penetrating the destroyer's screen. 2 of them hit Wasp's starboard side. Fire breaks out below deck, and Wasp sends up huge clouds of black smoke. And in one of those totally bizarre twists of fate, the torpedoes that miss Wasp continue on for 20 kilometers or so in the water, and in the vastness of the ocean, one of them hits and damages destroyer O'Brien, and another hits battleship North Carolina, tearing open its port side below the waterline. Rapid counterflooding means the ship is still able to make it away, leave the South Pacific, and slowly but surely head back to Pearl Harbor for dry dock repairs. As for Wasp, she is soon a raging inferno. Gasoline fires have set off bombs and ammunition, and the water main is broken, so the fire is out of control. She is abandoned just after 3 p.m. 25 of her 26 planes in the air make it to Carrier Hornet, and 45 go down with the wreck of the Wasp to the bottom of the sea at 9 p.m., sent there by a torpedo from her destroyer attendant. Nearly 200 men of the crew have died. Robert Gormley, commanding the South Pacific Naval Force, now has just 1 carrier to escort in those reinforcements, and Nobutake Kondo's Japanese Second Fleet is out there somewhere hunting. Richmond Turner, commander of the amphibious force, says they should continue the mission anyhow, regardless of the danger. They do, and he turns out to be right, because bad weather grounds enemy planes, and the Second Fleet does not intercept them. As the week ends, they reach Guadalcanal, where they will unload 4,157 Marines, 400 drums of aviation fuel, 137 vehicles, and over 1,000 tons of rations. They're gonna need all that food because Alexander Vandergrift now has over 23,000 Marines there. He has not been able, however, to expand the beachhead because there are still some 5,000 Japanese dug in a few kilometers beyond each side of Henderson Field. Turner isn't just acting on a hunch, though. Already the 11th, he and Vandegrift get Gormley's assessment of the whole thing, that he thinks the Japanese are assembling an overwhelming force to retake Guadalcanal at Truk and Rabaul, and they might be ready to attack in as little as 10 days, and that Gormley does not think he has the force required to fight them. So this transport convoy is to Turner of absolute necessity come hell or high water. So the 7th Marines have now arrived. Wasp is not the only large ship going down this week. On the 12th, former passenger liner Laconia is torpedoed and sunk off the West African coast by U-156 under Werner Hartenstein. Armed with 10 guns, depth charges, and a radar system, the Laconia now serves as a British troop ship. Hartenstein is just about to rejoin his wolf pack when he sees hundreds of people jumping from the sinking ship. He hasn't expected a full troop ship traveling alone and unescorted on this route. It soon is clear why, since a lot of the cries for help are in Italian. The Laconia has been transporting 1,500 Italian prisoners of war and 160 of their Polish guards. Hartenstein radios back to Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz explaining the situation. He does not want to stand by while hundreds of people, many of them allies, drown. Dönitz gives permission for a rescue operation. Hartenstein opens his communication channel to the Allies. He explains in an unencrypted message what is going on and that he will not attack any Allied ship that joins the rescue. To emphasize this, the Wolfpack puts Red Cross flags on their decks as they begin rescuing friend and foe alike. They save hundreds of people from the waters over the course of the night. But as the new day dawns, an American bomber attacks, the first bomb exploding in the middle of the lifeboats. When a bomb hits U-156, causing light damage, Hartenstein and the pack load as many Italians aboard their subs as they can and dive away from danger. The immediate consequence of the attack is that Dönitz issues the Laconia order. From now on, U-boat commanders may not undertake rescue operations involving the enemy anymore. Rescue attempts would contradict the most basic demands of the war, to destroy hostile ships and their crews. The order ends with a single demand: be harsh. And that is the week, with the Japanese being defeated on both New Guinea and Guadalcanal, but sinking an American carrier, though that cannot prevent the Marines from reinforcing. The fighting for Stalingrad is desperate, brutal, and indecisive, and an American bomber spoils a rescue after a U-boat sinks a liner. Oh, and on the 14th, American bombers attack Kiska, the Japanese-occupied island in the Aleutians. Stalingrad. Now that the fighting is for the city and not to get to the city, the names of the battle zones are no longer towns. They're buildings. The grain elevator, the tractor factory. We've seen that Chuikov plans to wreck the Axis advantage in mobile warfare by bringing the fight to as close quarters with them as he can and making them fight for each building and city block. Zhukov and Stalin know they have to hold on until at least November before counteroffensive can be assembled and ready. Can the Red Army do that? You want to know just how tough the Red Army is? You want to know just how deadly the Wehrmacht is? Well, I have a feeling we're going to find out both those answers pretty soon. If you'd like to learn more about a German assault on another fairly major name of the war, you can click right here to see our on-location special on the Maginot Line. And it seems like forever since we did that. Click right here. And our Time Ghost Army Member of the Week is Rune Hartwig. I have had him as Army Member of the Week before at exactly this week last year, because this is his birthday week. Now, here's the thing. Rune is actually in the room with me, and he has no idea I'm saying this. He's on vacation. He lives in Denmark, and he used to work with us. He used to do the day-by-day Instagram, our World War II day-by-day Instagram coverage. And it is his vacation, and he has come down here just to hang out with us for a few days. And so I put him to work running the teleprompter. And he did point out that in the September 4th episode, he really liked the tie that I was wearing. So Rune, this is a happy birthday present from me and Sparty and Astrid. Well, from everybody at Time Ghost. You can come and say hi if you like, or you can put everything down. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my close personal friend, Mr. Rune Hartvig. Rune, hi. Woo! All right, Rune, happy birthday, all right?
Thank you.
Say hi to everybody out there.
Hi, everybody.
All right. See, Time Goes to Army member of the week. So you should join the Time Goes to Army as well, and maybe you'll be here one day, right? And you can do that at timegoes.tv or patreon.com. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.
See you next time.
Yeah.